Welcome to Cypress Creek Adventures. Welcome to this week's Cypress Creek Adventures. We're going to do something a little different this week, and we're going to pressure can some meat using a pressure canner. And this is a different procedure than what you're probably used to with doing vegetables and jellies and such. And this is something that takes a lot of steps. Has some safety procedures and all, but once we finish, then we'll have a great product. Okay, I set up a table here at the house. I live in a very small space, but I wanted to show you my old pressure canner that I had here, and it's from about like the 1950s, and all it has is just this jiggler weight on here, and it has the different the 10 and 15 and 5. And we always use 10, and when we use the new canner here, we won't have to rely on the jiggler weight, and we'll explain more about that later. During this COVID, I've been trying to get a new canner. Out of stock. They even took my money and refunded it, and what people were doing, they were buying these at a regular price and then putting them on eBay. It's usually about $100 to about $120. And they were snatching them up, putting them on eBay and selling them for $300 and $400 for the exact same thing, just because they were scarce. Okay, I want to explain a few different things about this new canner that the old canner didn't have. One thing, it has this pressure gauge, and we'll be able to use this pressure gauge, and we want to be at 10 pounds, because we're right at sea level. If you're in a higher elevation, then you need higher pressure. Weight that goes on here, I call them jiggler weights. They call it a pressure regulator. And so the other thing that's on this is it has the safety lock. And once this pops up, you can't take the lid off until the pressure's away. And as the other one does, it also still has an escape safety valve right here. We hope that thing never goes off. It's a very nice canner. I'm very happy with it. This will be the first time I get to use it. And has a lot of features on it that the other one doesn't have. It has an easy line up section. And I'm very pleased with it. The advantage of having this big canner here is we can put 2 layers of jars in here, because I use the smaller jars, the 1 pint jars, because I'm by myself. I don't want to do great big quarts and then have to eat the same thing for 3 or 4 days. I can get 2 meals maybe out of one of these. So we'll move on to the next thing, and we'll talk about jars and preparation for that. The preparation, if we were doing water bath, these need to be sterilized. But because we're using a pressure canner, the internal temperature is going to be around 250 degrees. Boiling water is only 212, so these are going to be, as long as we're clean to start, then we shouldn't have any problems at all. And here's our rings, and these are the screw tops that go on. And I always buy brand new seals. You don't want to reuse seals. Some of these jars actually did come with seals on top, and I threw them away because I want to use brand new seals every time. Okay, so I've had this meat. There's been some extra meat that I've had in the freezer. And the whole purpose of canning the meat is if we have problems with not having an electric, our whole power grid is set up on a digital system. So, it could be compromised by terrorists or anybody. This is kind of extreme thoughts, but certainly could happen. We could have bad storm. These days, it doesn't seem like we're very long without electric. But if something should happen to our power grid, then you won't have a freezer, and you're going to lose all your important things that are in there, like this meat. The same as if I get a deer this year, I'm going to probably can the whole deer, and instead of putting it in the freezer, because I know that once this is canned, I don't have to be relying on a freezer. So we got some chicken legs, and I took and knocked the knuckle off of the end so we can pack them in the jars a lot better. And there's some breasts underneath. And then this is pulled pork right here. And so we're going to fill our jars with that. And we'll go through that procedure here next. Okay, so now we're going to take and fill these jars. And we want to fill them so they have at least 1 inch of head space on the top here. So we'll start with this chicken breast that I cut up. And we'll put that in here. And we want to pack it. It wants to be tight in here. And just keep pushing this in here. And as tight as we can get it. We'll pack that in there. And you can see we're getting here to the top. One more piece in here. Okay, so we're going to go with that for right now. And then we'll put a little liquid in here, and then we need to get all these air pockets out, and I'll show you how to do that when we get to it. So now we'll go put some of these legs in, and we put the legs in. They have a bone in them, and we alternate from one side to the other here of the size. Let's see if we can get this pushed down in here, and that fits nice and tight. And I can hear the air coming out when I push in there. I had a little bit of not enough breast to do a whole nother jar, so we'll top these off. Top this jar off with the chicken breast, and so now we have the 1 inch airspace. And now we're getting ready to do the pork. I want to say that in between every step I wash my hands with lots of soap, and we want to stay as sanitary as we can and keep our area clean. So I've done chicken, and now I'm going to do pork. So we use our hands here as what God provided for us to work with. Some of this meat in here is pretty nice. We're going to fill these jars just the same. We're going to make sure it gets packed. Now this meat is already cooked, but we still have to go through the same procedure whether it's cooked or raw, because we have to process this so that we get a good seal, a good vacuum inside here. So I'm pressing this all down in here. You can see we get this tight in here, and this is unseasoned and on purpose. This meat like this, I don't want to season it until I get done, and especially don't want to put any salt in here. So we have that packed pretty good right there. Okay, so I got the canner sitting here on the stove, and we've got to put 3 quarts of water in here yet. I got the baffle in the bottom, and you can't make out the mark, but there's graduated marks on the side there, so that if you use it for a water bath, or you could use it for cooking, but this pot will only forever be for canning. And one thing I want to say, this is very important. Don't use an outside burner like for a turkey fryer, or here in Chesapeake Bay we cook a lot of crabs. There's a lot of homemade cookers. I'd be very tempted to do this outside. And it's very dangerous because you put too much heat on this too fast, and then you can't regulate the temperature, and you want to be able to do that. So I have gas stove here. You certainly can do it on electric. If you have a glass top, you can do it on a glass top, but you need to get the other style bottom, and when you look it up, they'll tell you that it's for for convection or whatever that's called. The other thing you have to take in mind, this big canner here, I can put 20 of those little jars in here, and we're only going to do 7 today because we can do two layers of 10. That's a pretty big load. If you put that on a glass top, probably break it, because it's probably over 50 pounds loaded with the water and all the jars. So the most important thing is never try to do any canning. If you do outside canning, your temperature has to be right. We'll talk about that here in a little bit too. But never use an outside burner. If you have a stove, like a kitchen stove outside, yeah, you could do that if the outside temperature is cooperating. So we'll move on to the next thing now and get some water in here, and then I'll show you about sealing the jars up. Okay, so we ended up with 4 of the pork and 3 of the chicken. So now we want to take this towel and we're going to put some white vinegar on here. Get this towel wet with this vinegar. And now we're going to go over all these rims. Wipe each rim. Get all these rims clean. I've already wiped them off and cleaned up all the everything from when we stuffed them in the cans, or in the jars, excuse me. And so now we're taking any grease or any foreign spot that's on there off by cleaning that with those. So now we're ready for our seals. And these are brand new, out of the box Ball brand seals. And so we will put one on every one. Guess I miscounted. So one more here. Okay, so now we're going to put the rings on, and we don't want to over tight them, but they want to just be hand snug. Put those on there, just so they're just hand snug. You don't want to be jamming them on there or anything like that. Okay, just hand tight. Put these rings on. Okay, so now we're 2 more here. Okay, so now we're ready to put these in the canner. Okay, one thing I forgot to do with these chicken is that we have to make sure that there's no air in the bottom. You can see these spaces down here. So we're going to put just a little water in here. And then we take a non-metal, I'm going to use my wooden spoon here. And we push down here and you can see all the bubbles coming out. And we want to get all the air out of the bottom. And all from around all the spaces, and the water will take the place of that. And we still have our head space. And go all the way around and make sure we got all the air out. So I'll go back and do the other one that we did, and I did one already. I just discovered it, but that's very important that we get all the air out. Now you can see that in the bottom here, there's no air space. Okay, one thing I did want to note about the pork had a lot of juice in it already, so that there was hardly any spots left that had any air. It was the chicken with the chicken legs in there that ended up with the airspace. So, you know, I poked down in there and got all the air out. So now we're ready to put them in the canner. Okay, so I got our water in here up to the line. And so now we're going to put a little bit of white vinegar in our water. And what that does, that helps keep our jars clean. It's about a tablespoon. You know, don't measure exactly. We'll just put a little bit in there. So now we want to set our jars in here. And we don't want them touching. We'll just move them around here. And put them around in a row. We'll get all these on one layer. Alright. So spread these out. Once this lid goes on, we can't come back to these. Because it'll be locked down and the pressure will be building. So now we're going to put our lid on. And you can see we got this notch right here. Lines up with this notch right here. I'll pull this around and lock it. And this little safety right here, you could hear it jiggle a little bit. And there's a bar in there, and when the pressure gets on, this will come up. And you're not allowed to be able to open it. Where the old canner, somebody wasn't paying attention and they tried to open it. It could be a catastrophe because it's under pressure and the steam. and you really get hurt really bad. So we're about ready now to put some heat under this, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so now we're going to turn our burner on, and we're going to run this on high. I'm trying to get things centered up here a little bit, because once this starts, I don't want to move it at all. Okay, so we got fire under there, and that's got to boil those 3 quarts of water. Once this comes to a boil, then the steam will start coming out of here. Once that comes out of there in a steady stream, then we're going to set our timer for 10 minutes. And we're going to let it vent. When it vents, then that means all the air is out of here and there's nothing but steam inside. And then once we do that, then we're going to put our pressure weight on, jiggler weight, and then we'll go on to the next step after that. Okay, so now we're getting close. It's been about 25 minutes since we put the burner on. So now we're starting to get a little bit of steam. And our little safety valve was popped up there, so we're coming along pretty good. It's going to be probably another 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll be back. Okay, so now we're getting a pretty good spout of steam here. So we're going to set the timer for 10 minutes, and then we'll be back. Okay, we'll get ready to put our weight on. And what we're going to do now, we'll put this on here. And now we've got to wait for this pressure to come up. And when it gets up here to 10 pounds, then we will regulate our heat underneath. And then we got to maintain that 10 pounds on there for 90 minutes. And so this part of the process is patience. Sometimes I don't have enough, but you can't cheat and you can't rush this. It's got to be done the right way. So we'll stand here and wait for this pressure to start to build up, and when it gets to 10 pounds, then we'll regulate the heat and maintain that. Now if for some reason that it falls below the 10 pounds, then we have to start this whole system, this whole cycle all over again, because we've broken the cycle. It has to stay above 10 pounds. As you can see, it's starting to come up now. So it'll only be a minute or two here, and we'll keep eye on this. This is what I like about this canner. The other one, you know, you could put the jiggler weight on, then you had to keep fooling to keep so the jiggler weight was not rattling too hard, but not, you know, like every 30 seconds it needed to be moving around. And that's the only thing you had to go by. But this one, we got this pressure gauge, is very nice. So we'll be back here in a minute. You can see it's raising up. You can see we're almost there. And this gets a little bit past the 10 pounds, then I'm going to turn this heat down a little bit. And we'll have to, because this is new to me, we're going to have to babysit it a little bit. So there we are, we're at our 10 pounds. I'm going to give myself a little insurance and let it go on up to about 12. Different directions tell you different things, but the way I learned was the 10 pound method. It depends on your elevation, but here a lot of places we're even below sea level, so the 10 pound is the right rule for our area. Alright, so now I'm going to turn this fire down just a little bit. And now we're up here. We're at about 12 pounds. So we're going to maintain this. Keep an eye on that. We don't want it to raise anymore. If you were on electric, it'd be about medium high on your dial. So we're still, seems like we're staying pretty much at 12. I feel comfortable with that. If this was on the old canner, this thing here would be just carrying on, going on like that. This one here just seems like it leaks a little bit of the steam out. So I'll babysit this thing for a little bit, and once I get it so it's stabilized, now I'll check it about every 10 or 15 minutes, but we got to go 90 minutes. Okay, as you can see, I've been about 5 or 10 minutes, and I've been able to stabilize this so it's the poundage stays at about 11 to 12, but it's past the 10 pound. That's where we need to be. Another thing we'll talk about is if you take that weight off, it'll break every jar in the can because it'll depressurize too quickly. The only time that we can take that weight off is when that needle gets down to 0 and this whole canner cools off. And what will happen is, we're working on this here in the evening, but once we reach our 90 minutes, I'm going to shut it off, and I'm not going to fool with it until in the morning. And then we'll open it up and see how we made out. If you make any attempt to rush yourself and get in a hurry, you're going to break your jars. And so we don't want that to happen. The other important thing is, if you did do this outside and it was very cold, the cold temperature against this hot canner play against each other, and you can break your jars that way too. So you would have to bring your canner in from outside, but you take a chance on jiggling your jars around, and they're very fragile at this point when they're so hot. So the best thing to do is just do it in the house. We're at 7:45 here in the evening, and so we're going to go 90 minutes, and then we'll turn it off and then let it cool overnight. All right, well, we're back here this morning, and so we're going to open our can up, see how we did. So there's our pork. There's our chicken legs. And pork. It turned out very well. So we're take these out and wipe them off, and we'll take the lids, take these rings off. And as you can see, this is dimpled down, so every one of these is sealed very well. There's a vacuum inside here, and as long as this seal is tight, it will last forever. I mean, I've seen stuff that's been on the shelves for 50 years and it still looks just as good, and I no doubt would probably be okay to eat. But for us, if I get 5 years out of this before I have to use it, then that'll be all right too. Okay, so I got the jars out of the canner, and I've taken the rings off, and I've gone through every one just to double check to make sure that they're all tight. You don't want to pry on them because you don't want them to open. But they're dimpled down, and they're all very tight. And these jars are, even after 8 or 9 hours, are still slightly warm coming out of the canner. So these will be ready to go on the shelf, and every one of them I'll take and I'll put what it is, like pork, or I'll just put leg because it's obvious chicken, and then I'll put the date on, and that way we know what's there and what date we canned it. But canning is a basic function of the kitchen, and has been for a long time. In the last 25 years we've been in a digital age, and a lot of these things have gotten lost. And before that time, there was just about everybody had garden, put up vegetables, and back in earlier times before we had too much refrigeration and freezers, things were always preserved in jars. So I hope this has been informative to you. You can look up on the USDA site, and there's a lot of information there about canning. Same with your local extension service, and of course online you can Google. There's many great people online that are been doing this for years and years, and they have beautiful pantries they'll show you. For me, I just wanted to share my basic knowledge of canning meat, because not many people do that these days. There's still quite a few people that put up, you know, their vegetables and soups and stuff like that. But using a pressure canner is a different, whole different world compared to a water bath. So I hope you enjoyed this, and please like and share and subscribe to my channel. And thank you for watching, and God bless.